We start in English first, and my lecture is supposed to be 30 minutes or less than 30 minutes. And this year, 2018 Nobel Economics Science Prize, and subtitle is Professor Hirofumi Uzawa, that is a Japanese economist. And Professor Uzawa's contribution to economic growth and climate change. And the combination is a little bit different, different from the original title, but I wish to focus on how the Professor Uzawa contribute to the economic growth theory and climate change and global warming. So that is the issue I wish to address. And the message is quite simple. That is a criticism against the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences to choose and select the Nobel laureate. And selection is all right. This year, selection is perfect, weighing the economic growth and global climate change. So issues and the combination might be very splendid and interesting. But the problem is there are many methods and many researchers related to the global climate change and global warming. And the Swedish Academy of Science didn't mention cleverly of the alternative methods and researchers. That is my criticism. So that message is quite simple. And why I should use English to give this kind of the message is I wish to deliver my message to the Royal Swedish Academy. So when I talk about this in Japanese, so they don't care. And actually, I wrote new articles to be published in sometimes the famous newspaper in Europe, but it is turned down. So this is the only possible way for me to criticize the Royal Swedish Academy. Okay? So the answer, the content of the criticism is quite simple. As I mentioned already, Nobel Economics Science prizes, that is very authoritative. Even if there are so many different methods and different researchers, and the policy agenda might be different, once they pick up, this is a Nobel Prize, it might be very authoritative. So it would terminate the other people's view or some kind of weakening the different views. So that is the bad side effect of the authoritative prize. It's totally different in the different field. For example, the physics or medical science or chemistry, it didn't happen, and it will not happen. But in economic sciences, it did happen in the past, and it will happen in the future. So that is I'm worried about. And the question is, for example, when I teach at the business school, I teach the basic course entitled the Economy, Society, and Business. So that is a fundamental course and basic course for every student. And what is the principle behind that course is the question number one. What is the most important event for your country in the past 50 years or shorter, 30 years? So that is a question I wish to address. So there might be various responses. And one of the response is some kind of the crisis and sustainability. So global climate change and global warming is related to that event. So that is a question. And my own answer is the balancing of the economic growth and the quality of life in my course at the business school. Why is that? Past 30 years in Japan, Japan experienced a lower economic growth rate, 1% per year or 2% a year, at most 2% a year. Why the 2% a year is so little? So the answer is to be compared with other countries. United States and Asian countries experience a higher economic growth rate. What is the result of the difference between the several percentage and 1 or 2%? And the second question is the quality of life. So I wish to focus on the quality of life or some kind of a social framework to accommodate or maintain the quality of life in Japan. So one simple question is there any negative trade-off between economic growth and the quality of life, or some kind of the positive correlation exists? So that is an important question. So I totally agree with this year's Nobel Economic Prize by balancing the two different views. So that is a homage to the Royal Swedish Academy. But, okay, so two economists received the Nobel Economic Sciences Prize. Did you recognize these two? In Japanese business press or newspaper mentioned several, they identify the two professors, but the coverage is very limited. So this might be the first occasion for you to identify who is Professor Paul Romer and who is William Nordhaus. The right hand is Professor Nordhaus, and the left hand side is Professor Paul Romer. And
simple question.
Yes.
Usually, engineering and science Nobel Prize
Yes.
is initially nominated through the number of citations
Yes.
of the papers.
Yes.
The economics Nobel Prize is the same situation. Their paper, citation number is most.
Yes, I think so, and I've heard that. But real selection system is confidential, so we cannot detect what kind of citation index they use or what kind of the citation. So I examined by using the citation index, and I use the PhD dissertation citation index instead of the papers. How many graduate students cite these kind of the economists? So that is my method is a little bit different. But I've heard the Swedish Academy focus on the citation and the influence of the researchers. So these two researchers are very powerful and published many papers, and their papers are cited very frequently. So they are entitled to be a laureate, Nobel laureate. So no wonder, okay? The two other professors I wish to mention this time is Professor Nicholas Stern. He is British, and he is famous for publishing the Stern Review on the global warming, global climate change in 2006. So that is very influential, and it is some kind of the Bible for the people who might be worried about climate change. So it is very influential, and he is a great economist. But he couldn't get the Nobel Prize this year. And Hirofumi Uzawa, that is Japanese, even if he wears a white beard. He's Japanese. And he died 2014, 4 years ago. He already died, and he passed away. And his economics is focusing on the economic growth theory in his early age, around 30 years or 40 years old. He invented, and he is the founder of the economic growth theory. And when you read the classic paper, you came across with his paper quite a lot. And also, he is a pioneer of the global warming research in Japan and also all over the world. And he is a pioneer of the research in the global warming. So my criticism against the Swedish Academy is they should emphasize these two professors in announcement of the Nobel Economic Prize. That is my message. And actually, the Swedish Academy referred to Professor Nicholas Stern by Stern Review or that kind of thing. So one sentence or one line. And Academy totally forget or intentionally ignore Professor Hirofumi Uzawa's contribution.
Because he has already passed away.
Yeah.
The Nobel Prize is only the live field.
Yes, but in the announcement, there might be the explanation. This field is built on the past researches. So the Hirofumi Uzawa's achievement should be emphasized. And that is the point. And for the Japanese economists or Japanese professors, including myself, should protest against Swedish Academy because we know this kind of the situation. Okay, so that is a second message. So I'm fulfilling my responsibility as a Japanese economist to say something against the Swedish academies. Okay.
Professor Uzawa write lots of English paper.
Yes, and he used to. Okay.
Japanese paper is usually ignored.
Yes, so that is the problem, and I analyze why there is no mention about the Professor Uzawa in the announcement. So that is the puzzle I should. Okay, let's go back to the Professor Roma and William Nordhaus, and these two professors and Stern Review, as I mentioned, that is very influential and powerful report. So also this year's Nobel Economic Prize is important for the United Nations, focusing on the UN Sustainability Development Goals. And you came across with this sign already, no? Quite a lot. And this is very important. And I'm not sure that you can identify what is the 17 UN goals. So there are so many. For example, the poverty, and this may be the affordable and clean energy. And 13, the climate action. So Nobel Economic Prize are related to this UN Sustainable Development Goals this year quite closely. So I appreciated this year's Nobel Economic Prize. And this is the detail of the 17th. And about the economic sciences prizes is, strictly speaking, this is not the Nobel Prize. The long sentence. The Sverige Riksbank Prize in Economic Science in memory of Alfred Nobel. So that is the exact title of the prize. In Japanese, we call that is a Nobel Prize, but actually it's not a Nobel Prize, okay? And two professors, William Nordhaus, for integrating climate change into long-run macroeconomic analysis, and Paul Romer for integrating technological innovation into long-run macroeconomic analysis. So the long-run macroeconomic analysis, which means economic growth theory, or focusing on the economic growth. So two factors are climate change and technology. So they are two important issues. And this is an explanation made by the Swedish Academy for the ordinary people. And this is a picture. And the strange picture is Professor Romer is left-hand side, and Professor Nordhaus is, two professors are standing on the one professor. His name is Solow. That is an American economist, and he invented the economic growth theory. And along with British professors and other professors, not a single person invented the economic growth theory, but he received the Nobel Economic Prize in the past. So two professors are standing. And this is similar to the United Nations sustainable goals, energy and climate change. So they are related to each other, okay? So sustainable goals, there's a combination of the growth and life. So there might be explanation in detail. So I totally agree with this explanation. And so almost I have done what I wish to say, but I will add additional information from now. And historical evaluation as an episode. And there is one famous financial economist, Burton Malkiel, Professor Burton Malkiel. He is famous for his book, A Random Walk Down Wall Street. And this is very famous. And there is one anecdote or episode. 1626, more than almost 400 years ago, Indian tribes sold the Manhattan Island to white men in exchange of the 24 US dollars at that time. Okay? So maybe beads or some kind of glasses worth 24 US dollars at that time. So that is the episode. And why Indian people sold the Manhattan vast island with this 24 cheap gadget? So that is a question. That is 17th century, 16 to 26. And they might be cheated by white men with selling with low price. But Burton Malkiel may have the different story. That is, if there is a financial market, and if there is a financial instrument to carry the 6% or 7% or 5% income for every year, what would happen after 400 years? Guess what? after 400 years with 6% average annual return. So what would happen for 400 years? The answer is like this. 6% interest rate in compound interest rate, after 400 years, 199 billion US dollars. So $24 has become the 200 billion US dollars. That is the question. So you can purchase the gorgeous Trump Tower or even some section of the Central Park. Okay? But the question is more strange. If the financial instrument is 77% per year, so 8 trillion US dollars can be achieved in 400 years. So 8 trillion US dollars is more than Manhattan real estate price altogether at this moment. So Manhattan Island value is 1.74 trillion US dollars at this moment. So Indian people can purchase 3 Manhattan Island at this moment also, okay? And 8% more surprising, the 300 trillion US dollars. So just one single percentage, 6%, 7%, 8%, or 5%, just small percent difference means quite a lot in 400 years. Is that right? So that is the story of the Burton Malkiel. And in that case, Indians sold the Manhattan Island with 24 US dollars 400 years ago. But if the financial market and the financial instruments are available, there might be no serious problem, or they can benefit from this kind of financial investment. But the question is, when we talk about economic growth or quality of life in 100 years or 200 years or 300 years in the long term, this kind of a calculation means quite a lot. So that is a question, and that is a serious question. That is my own impression, okay? So I will skip the economic part or economic theory part of the economic growth. As a business school student, you should learn the introductory microeconomics and macroeconomics. And you may have learned already, and this is the production growth or something. And Professor Romer contributed quite a lot to the economic growth theory by introducing the role of the technology innovation and education itself. So that is very important. And about the second issue, global warming. This is global warming according to the Google Books Ngram View World. As you know, the global warming or global climate change issue started around 1985. Before that, there is no such kind of mention. And after that, since then, the huge amount of the books are written on this issue. So this is very important issue. And as I mentioned already, these two professors are so important. And as to the global warming and Nordhaus, he wrote 4 famous textbooks on the global climate change. And the recent one might be the Climate Casino or this kind of thing. So you may have read already. And his DICE model, he predict the long-run effect of the global warming with using his model. And his model is like this. And he calls this is a DICE model. And so how to evaluate the CO2 emission or accumulation of the CO2 in 100 years or 200 years. That is some kind of the estimation he can make based on his DICE model. And every government, every country use a similar method along with DICE model. So if you are interested in please enter the Yale University's Node House homepage. There is the DICE model is available, and you can simulate your own country's future, and it might be very helpful. Debates, various opposing views exist, and Nicholas Stern, Hirofumi Uzawa, these two professors are a little bit opposed to the Professor Nordhaus in one sense. That is, Professor Stern is focused on the bad effect of the global warming. And also Professor Uzawa, he wished to focus on the bad effect of the economic growth or the bad effect of the global warming. But Professor Nordhaus wished to balance the economic growth with global warming. So that is a little bit different. Three professors are focusing on the global climate change, but some kind of the policy agenda or policy suggestion or policy recommendation, the attitude might be a little bit different. So that is very important. As I mentioned, in 400 years, significant change would happen, even if there is a 1% difference in terms of the rate of return. Amounts to an astronomical difference in 400 years. And position on global warming, that is my impression. The growth, the limit to the growth, the limits to growth. This is a very famous book written by Club Law, and in 1972. At that time, it is very influential, and it would impact the world society. Natural resources might be very limited, and we cannot grow economy forever. And food shortage would happen, and energy shortage would happen in the near future. So that is some kind of the book. And Nicholas Stern, the economics of climate change in 2006, that is some kind of the Bible for the people who might be worried about global warming. And a question of balance. So he used Nordhaus, Professor Nordhaus used a phrase of a question of balance, which means economy and global warming. So this title is very impressive to focus on the balancing act. And Hirofumi Uzawa, Economic Theory and Global Warming, that is a very simple title. And he is focusing on the social overhead capital and social common capital for the natural surrounding. And he wished to preserve the social common capital as much as possible to maintain the quality of life of the human beings. So that is my understanding. So these four books might be in a different setting, but in different positioning. But this might be some kind of the easy understanding for the debate of the global warming. Okay. So I will finish up. And I used to be the Yale University's graduate student to learn the economics, and I took Professor Nordhaus' course, and I didn't get a good grade by him. So, but it doesn't matter. And 1986, around the fall of the 1986, and the Yale University seminar at macroeconomics, and a young researcher was invited, and he made a presentation on his research, and he explained just a little bit, very quickly. We discount the future utility of the future generation with this discount rate, and he wished to jump on another issue. But at that time, the Professor Nordhaus was sitting behind and raised a hand. And he asked this question: why do you discount? And why do you discount is a simple question for the economist. Economist is accustomed to discount many things for the future cash flow or future utility. And that macroeconomist couldn't get good reply. So a young scholar lost his words to make. So that is the episode. And I remember that kind of the occasion. And I tell this story to the other professors. His name is Professor Hamada. She is very famous as an advisor to the Prime Minister Abe at this moment. And he said, Professor Nordhaus is very great because he raised this simple question in the seminar among the professionals, and raised this fundamental question is very important as an academician. So I was so much impressed with his Professor Hamada's remark and Professor Nordhaus' question. So every time at the master thesis presentations, master student say something about the discounting, so I would raise a question, similar question. Why do you discount? And mostly, they cannot explain. And if they try to explain, it's better to ask, why do you use this discount rate? So maybe the almost 100% master student cannot reply this kind of simple question. So I imitate the Professor Nordhaus way, okay? And discount cash flow or discount utility might be very important. For example, this is when you use a 6% discount rate for the future generation 1 year ahead, and present value and future value. This year, $1, but 10 years ahead, that is half when you use a 6% discount rate. Future value, as I mentioned already, 1.8 in the future, 10 years ahead from now, as Burton Malky's story. So discount rate is very important. And when you use a discount rate in 100 years, so this question is very important for your evaluation of the global warming, because we are worried about the future generations' benefit and cost of the global warming. So at least a grandson or granddaughter, that is 100 years from now. So when you use this kind of discount future values or discount present values, so 100 years from now is almost nothing when you use a 6% discount rate. But when you use almost 0% discount rate, 100 years ahead generation is evaluated with the same weight of the present generation. So this might be the big difference. So what kind of discount rate should be applied? That is very important. And the question is, when you talk about global warming, so this might be very important. The Nicholas Stern, the Stern review, that he used almost 0% discount rate, maybe 1% or so. So which means the future generation should be more evaluated. But when Nordhaus used 6% or 5%, actually he used a different type of the discount rate. But if we use 5 or 6%, there might be no serious bad effect in the future. So that is the balancing of the economic growth and the bad effect of the global warming. The discount rate means quite a lot. So that is my understanding, and that is my naive understanding. And this issue, as I mentioned, 1986 at the macroeconomic seminar at Yale University, he raised this question by himself. Why do you discount? What kind of the discount rate he should use? So I hit upon this kind of the episode this year in October. Oh, I remember he mentioned this thing more than 30 years ago. Okay? So he kept thinking about this kind of the issue for almost one generation long. So in that sense, he deserves the Nobel Economic Prize. He raised a simple question no young professor care about. But he focused on this simple question quite a long time. But at the same time, I wish to say that when the Professor Nordhaus used 5% or 6%, there is no significant bad effect of the global warming in terms of the dollar terms. So the natural scientists or many scientists try to establish is there any global warming or temperature, how much temperature will happen in the 100 years or 200 years from now. But at the same time, when you talk about economic policy or economic growth, the discount value should be used to evaluate the policy effect. So my final comment is like this. Swedish Academy should mention and should be very cautious about this kind of the policy issues. And Professor Nordhaus himself recognized this issue in his life. But balancing is very difficult in the long run. So maybe the Swedish Academy should be cautious and sensible about these issues. And at least they should mention Nicholas Stern's attitude and Professor Uzawa's contribution and global warming or global climate change. There might be many various opinions and studies and researchers. And all are combined. They should debate scientifically And as a policy issue, they should debate in policy arena. It's not the Nobel Economic Prize authority to determine this person is correct and this research method is correct. So that is my understanding. So I wish to raise this issue this time. So that is my own personal criticism against the Nobel Economic Prize regarding to the mention of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. So it's not good to be authoritative in the field of the debate. So that is my understanding. Okay. So much. So I should have. I used the 40 minutes. Sorry. Is that all right? Okay. So Professor Komatsu, crisis and sustainability management. And he will talk 30 or 40 minutes, and we will be in time on the 6 o'clock closing times, okay? So will you use the USB? まだ入ってないですけども、送っていただいたものをすればいいですか。では5分間ちょっと今操作しますのでお待ちください。はい、ちょっとお待ちください。はい。